Is that enough to get a helicopter in there and a couple other items to be able to get your airplane out of the place where you had to have a forced landing? Probably not. So under this policy, you get 100% forced landing coverage. So if your aircraft's worth 100 grand, you get $100,000 to get your airplane out of there. And so that's a lot of policies, they do 20%, 30%, and 50%. But this policy does 100%, just to make sure that you're looked after. Now, amendment to policy territory. In this section right here, under this policy, nowadays, a lot of them, they do include Alaska. Global, unfortunately, they did exclude Alaska, but now we put it back on there that under the COPA endorsement, Alaska is covered. But one other thing that's covered is Mexico. Now, if you look at every policy in Canada, it says Mexico is covered. That's pretty standard. But what a lot of people don't know is that you actually need a Spanish wording if you fly to Mexico. So the amazing thing that Global Aerospace does, because they actually are big enough, they have contracts with that Spanish wording where they'll actually pay the $300 for you and automatically, at your request, issue a Spanish policy. No other insurance company in Canada does that. You have to go through McCafe and enter all your details, the weight category, and all of that to be able to get the Mexican or Spanish wording, and you have to pay the $300 US to be able to do that. So that's a very huge thing that Global Aerospace has added in there. Now, this is one that I was just thinking of personally for myself with regards to the number 9, spares. So the policy automatically covers $25,000 worth of spares. But what does that mean for a pilot? Well, under this wording, it actually covers even things such as it shall include but not be limited to engines, propellers, components, avionic tools, miscellaneous parts, aircraft handling, and service and equipment. Well, no other policy in Canada automatically covers this. But I was thinking, like, let's say you're a float plane pilot and you're flying in the winter and you take your floats off and your hangar burns down, float's gone. Is that covered under here? Yes, it is. You're not even thinking about that. You took your floats off for the winter and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna store them there. Well, you actually have $25,000 automatically on the policy. Now, little things like trip interruption coverage, you end up having a forced landing and you need to get back home. Well, you have up to $1,000 per person to be able to get a ticket, airplane ticket to be able to get back home. But $1,000 doesn't seem like that much, but this is fairly standard for the amount. But the interesting thing is there's no deductible on there. And that's one of the main questions that people would come back to me. Oh, is it $250? Well, there's no point using it anyway. But this is just an extra item that's covered under this policy. Now, number 11, pilot clause. When you're flying your aircraft and you're like, okay, the AME just did some maintenance on my airplane, I want him to be able to fly. Well, normally what do you have to do? You got to get what we call a pilot information report. You send it to your broker sends it to the insurance company sends it back to you, you send an email, can I confirm that I can add this pilot? And it's a lot of work. But what we did for these instances is that we have an open pilot warranty on here where it says 150 hours total time, 10 hours on make and model and configuration. So if it's floats, it's floats. And on the next page, it says 10 hours on any aircraft in the last 12 months. So if the pilot fits within that category and you approve them, they can fly your aircraft. And it saves a lot of paperwork with regards to that. Now, one thing I want to be very clear, especially that has been going on for years and years and years with the previous broker, is people are flying under that open pilot warranty and they're treating it like a flight club. And in the previous one, on some of them says, as approved by the named insured. And they found out in accidents that sometimes it was up to 30 people were flying that person's aircraft. That is not the intent of this policy. It's for the one-off pilot to be able to fly your aircraft. And if they find that there's 30 people flying your aircraft, that can possibly be what we call a material change in risk because it's no longer private business and pleasure. It's a flying club aircraft. And if it's a flying club aircraft, they have to rate it that way and understand what it is being used for. So I just wanted to be clear on that. And if we can get to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, so just to talk about the open pilot warranties, it's just a nice thing for you because I just know a lot of guys are like, can we fly together, go down to Vancouver, can you just bring my aircraft back? I'm gonna be there for a week. It's really handy to have in that instance. Now, premises liability extension to an aircraft liability. What does that mean? That means that if you have your aircraft in the hangar and you personally invite me to come fly with you, and while I'm walking over there and I slip on oil and break my leg, you have up to $1 million worth of coverage that's automatically included in there. Now the question is across Canada, what do a lot of people do when they buy a hangar? They normally just get this extended to their hangar and they're like, yeah, everything's fine, it's free, it's included, or it's $200 and I'm all good to go. But one thing that you have to understand is, what is this liability trying to cover? It's trying to cover the operation of the aircraft. So you put your aircraft in here and then, or you pull it out, either vice versa, and then there's snow on the top and it lands on the car outside. Is that connection with your aircraft or is that connection with your hangar? So a lot of people, they're like, I just buy this coverage, I'm all good. But that's where they need to understand that if they're gonna have a big hangar like this, they should really have what we call a standalone package for premises liability. And usually 1 million's $1,000, 2 million's $1,200, 3 million's $15, 5 million's $1,750. But a lot of people don't want to spend that money, so they do that. So for me, just as a broker, so I don't get sued selling the wrong coverage, I try to mention that at least to them, and then at that point they can make that decision whether they want to buy just this coverage. Now, hull and liability coverage for aircraft not owned by you. Now this, you'll notice it says we will extend coverage A. Coverage A is at alpha or full coverage. So let's say you have your Comanche, again, and you want to fly somebody else's Comanche or another Mooney that has 3 passenger seats or less. You actually have coverage under here to be able to fly that aircraft, because it says as long as it's a similar type of aircraft with the same amount of seats or less and the same type of configuration. Now we need to understand that this is just secondary coverage. Realistically, if you're flying your friend's aircraft, you want to be named as an approved pilot. You want to see yourself on their policy. But let's say either they don't want to do that or you just want extra protection. Once again, if you get named on their policy, they crash, and they find out that you're liable and they want to sue you, well, in this case, you have up to the hull value of your aircraft, or up to, if you have an expensive aircraft, up to a maximum of $200,000. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, in Canada, any policy that at least offers this only goes to $100,000. When was the last time you've seen another Cessna 172 that's really worth less than $100,000? It's really not enough coverage on there. So that's why we have the extension of $200,000, and then it offers a liability limit that you have currently purchased. Now, extra expense, I won't jump into it too much. It's more in the wording, but it just, if you have to rent another aircraft, there's coverages like that if you were to have an accident up to a certain amount. But we won't dive too deep into that. If we can go to the next slide, that would be great. Then once again, we have liability coverage for personal injury other than bodily injury caused by an accident. What I'm gonna say is this endorsement is free access. So I'm not sure if Hannah can put it on the webpage, or if anybody wants it, they can reach out to me and I can send it so they can actually read the jargon of the insurance aspect of it. But I also don't want to go on too long about it. But one cool coverage is the sale of aircraft. A lot of policies do not cover this. So let's say you have a Cessna 172 and you sell that aircraft, and 6 months into the new owner flying it, goes and crashes it and says it's something that you did to the aircraft and that's the reason why I crashed it and I'm suing you. Well, this policy covers you up to $1 million for the first year after you sell the airplane. So it's something nice to be able to be included, but you will notice that it, when you read through it, doesn't do it for ownership, maintenance, or rather amateur-built aircraft. Basic, advanced ultralight, and amateur-built aircraft. It doesn't cover that, but for certified airplanes. And then we have one last page here. Okay, that was it. I don't know if my email went through with it. But okay, yeah, sorry, page number 505 was that last thing explaining the sale of air. Oh no, there is the last page. Yeah, there's one more. So this policy went as far as like little things, like we were just thinking outside the box. Like let's say you did get him put in prison in the US and you needed bonds to get out of prison. The policy even covers you $10,000 to pay for bonds. So we're trying to really think outside the box. And what it really comes down to is we get a lot of calls from guys and they're like, yeah, well, it's not the cheapest, or it's the same price as my other policy. And so they're like, well, why should I go with you? And I said, well, look at all the extra coverages. It's not just about getting the cheapest policy, it's getting a policy that's going to protect you in the event that you actually have an accident. And I want to be very realistic with this new Canadian Aviators Canada Insurance Program. In the first 60 days that we've done this, I would say realistically 75 to 80% of people have been extremely happy with it. On the other 20 to 25, we're still working out the kinks, we're still revising some of the ratings. It's definitely going to have some growing pains along the way. But in the bottom of our email, we write, if there's any information or advice that you can give us so that we can make it better, please let us know. And many people have come back and they're like, well, can you help with this type of aircraft? This is this, this is this. And what Canadian Owners Pilots Association really try to do is make a package for the members. So if there's something completely out of whack that maybe is off, we want that advice because we always want to grow and make it better. And so for that aspect, if people are able to do that, that's great. But for the rest of it, we're seeing that people are extremely happy. And this is not just a one-time thing like this year. We have a 5-year plan to continue to make this better and streamline it. For example, who hates filling out aircraft insurance applications? Yeah, pretty much every single person. So at this point, we built a system where we only need your once you filled out the first time, we only need your last 12 months, hours on the aircraft. Literally it gets sent out an email, you just type in that, and that's all we need with regards to that. And eventually in the future, it's going to be even streamlined where it can be added. You can just add that and the quote will automatically come. There's a lot of stuff that's coming down the line for this. And right now, we're really just in the beginning stages. And if people are happy already at this, just look where we're going to go in the future and what we can do for this. So I don't try to talk too long on this. I try to do about 30 minutes. And then if you have any questions, just let me know, and then we can answer them. I'm not sure if we have a second mic because it's recorded and it's also on all the people that are streaming. So if you have a question, we're going to give you a mic, so wait for that, and then I can answer those questions for you. Any questions?
Yeah, your point about the little extras that are included in your policies versus the competition is something that's new to me, because when I was going for insurance, I didn't know what I didn't know. And when you read a policy and you read through all the, rebus ribus type of stuff, it's just like, what? I just want a bottom line number. And so I guess I appreciate the fact that, you might not be the cheapest, but if you get all these extras that I didn't know is included, then I think you can balance it out. And I think maybe from your guys' standpoint, it might be good to put out insurance for dummies so that it's like, hey, this is what we give you. This is, in plain English, not in lawyer talk, but in plain English. Like, if this happens to you, this is what you're covered with. And I think that would go a lot to, making people understand one insurance policy from the next.
I totally agree with you, and we're working on that. So we already have on our quotes, if you buy number 1, and it's like check boxes, this is what you get. If you buy this, this is what you get. X, check, 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 and then X, X, check, check along the way. But we have a long way to go where we want to create documents in the future that are so simple for pilots. Because the biggest thing is you go to a broker and you're expecting them to be able to know what they're supposed to tell you. But a lot of times it's just a number that rolls right through, and we're trying to revolutionize aviation insurance in Canada. And like I said, we're not perfect, but we're going to take this to the next level for people and set a new standard. So thank you for making that comment. I really appreciate that. Any other comments?
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I made, if I can say, 3 notes. Insurance credits, you mentioned something like, let's say somebody is taking more courses, or if you can develop a little on that, and fly with other pilots. So you were mentioning in your example that, oh, what if you fly occasionally, let's say once or twice a year? But what kind of coverage would there be for somebody who wants to fly, let's say, monthly with other pilots?
Okay. So number 1, with regards to the credits, so we're working on the renewals. So right now, everything is technically new under the COPA program. So, but on the renewals, we're going to do We just have to revisit it, but if it's like 60 days or 90 days, you get a check ride with a flight instructor, they're gonna give you potentially a 5% discount on your policy. Now, with regards to who can fly your aircraft, I mention that just because I'm very wary of saying it's just one-offs, but technically these policies can cover somebody flying your aircraft up to about 5 pilots in total, 5 or 6 pilots under there. So it could be your friends that are flying monthly. I just don't want to go necessarily above that because it can change the material risk on there. And also you have to consider the fact that, are you making money off the aircraft? Because if you're making money off the aircraft, it's no longer private business and pleasure insurance. So you need to, if a flight school is charging $175 and you're charging $185 to rent your aircraft, you're making money off of it. So you need to follow Transport Canada regulations of what their definition is for allowing others to use your aircraft. So hopefully that answers. Other questions? This is the least amount of questions I had in a long time. Maybe we answered everything. One last fun fact I like to give for people. If you buy an Nangchang and you want to do joyrides or have fun with people and take paying passengers, do you need to get a commercial operating certificate? The answer is no. Because there's actually a warbird exemption in Transport Canada regulations that came out a couple years ago, that if you have a Nangchang or one of those warbird, that you actually can do paying passenger flights in there. And for myself, Doug and Ashley know, I've studied Mandarin for about 6-7 years, and about an hour a day so I can speak Chinese. And a guy calls me up to me one day and he says, you know, you have to be able to speak Chinese to be able to read these Transport Canada regulations. I said, no worry, I got your back. I pulled up the warbird exemption and gave it to him. So there's a fun fact for you if you ever get a Harvard or something like that. So thank you everyone for coming to listen to this insurance presentation. Really appreciate it. And I was going to say one last thing. If you want to reach me, you can find me either on Instagram or they can send out an email, but it's just under Caleb Winterburn if you have any messages, which is sometimes the easiest. And then also Hannah will be able to get emails out to you with my actual contact information.
Thank you so much, Caleb. So for the people who are watching us online, we had a bit of a hiccup starting the live stream. So if anyone missed the first part, we will have a recording up soon. And I'm sure that Caleb will be hosting many more insurance seminars or webinars that we will be coordinating together. So those will be communicated through COPA's social media channels and by email. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Caleb at copa@covalent.ca or reach out to the COPA team, and Caleb will be answering your questions. Thank you so much.